this is what I found on the density of the zebra population based on migration and seasonal changes throughout the Serengeti. So basically, a key point of this was that migration is a key part of a species survival and that it is crucial in understanding a species' behaviors. And so the hypothesis and the predictions that I made were based on these two questions as well. Um, Firstly, what variables influence migrational patterns and why does a species migrate? So, for my hypothesis, it was that the density of the zebra population changes between camera sites due to seasonal changes and migratory behavior. And predictions were that we would see a consistent pattern and density change of the zebra population throughout time and seasons each year. And then so basically why the zebras migrate, answering that last question is firstly due to just instinctual migratory behavior and seasonal changes. So these are the locations of the camera sites that we pulled the data from, seen in those square boxes. And then so these are the specific quadrants. And for the graphs on the next slide, it was determined most plausible to focus on the years 2011, 2012, and 2013 since they had data for the whole year, whereas 2010 and 2014 did not because the project started in August 2010 and ended in late July 2014. So focusing on each month of a year for each full year was believed to be the most efficient in observing patterns due to seasonal changes and comparing / contrasting possible differences between each year's findings. So we have graphs for 3 whole years, 2011, 2012, and 2013. And so on the 3 graphs were set up with the number of zebra captures at those specific quadrants seen in the last slide on the y-axis and the months of each year on the x-axis. So for these 3 figures, they demonstrated a pattern of the same peaks and drops for the number of zebras captured at the same times of the month for each year. Little to no zebras as well were seen captured from September to November, and as well as from January to March and May to early July. So if we look through these 3 consecutive years, we do see consistent patterns of the zebras being captured at certain sites and not being captured, insinuating that they had moved elsewhere from those sites. And we can see that in these 3 graphs. So the results given in those 3 figures demonstrate that zebras do move throughout the Serengeti at certain months throughout the year. And as expected, the zebras migrate based on seasonal changes because as they are being seen at those certain sites during certain times of the year. And because these seasonal changes affect resources such as food and habitat. As well, though, as possible errors within the study were that there were only 3 whole years of data that were collected. And if there were more years of migrational patterns observed, stronger hypotheses could be made, as well as that climates are always changing, and on a broader scale, 3 years is not a very long time. Though, based on the results from the given figures, we do observe noticeable and repeatable patterns to suggest that zebras do in fact have migrational patterns based upon seasonal changes. And to further explain these findings, we can look at the effects of these seasonal patterns on the food and ecosystem within the Serengeti. For an example, an article from the Ecological Society of America detailed their observations on the role of these composite environmental factors within the Serengeti and how these have affected the herding of species. This could further explain motives for different species migrational patterns, as well as findings from a study called What Limits the Serengeti Zebra Population. It was found that though wildebeest and buffalo have shown markedly different trends into the 1960s, zebras have been found to remain fairly stable. So, speaking of possible errors of 3 whole years not being enough, it possibly could be, since due to findings going back from the 1960s, their migrational patterns have been fairly stable. And so, as well as the work cited, and this video was made within the context of Bio 182 General Biology for Majors 2, Arizona State University, Fall 2022.